A man was sitting enjoying his meal, thunder dragon fried meat, as delicious as he expected. He was satisfied to know that he had found a great gift for the villagers. Meanwhile, in the forest, some strange objects were lined up in a circle, sticking out of the ground. It turned out to be a teleportation point for a carriage. The scene changes to a carriage traveling towards George, a vibrant village in the western kingdom of the Urals. It is the 10th of June, 10 past 13, according to the sacred calendar, and the villagers were busy and happy. The old village porter saw the carriage and recognized Kakyo, our main character. They exchanged some jokes, and when Kyo tried to pay the entrance fee, the old man refused, saying that Kyo was already part of the village. Still, Kyo insisted. Rules are like promises to him, and he always keeps his promises. Later, Kakyo prepared a meal for the residents, who really enjoyed it and agreed that their food was simply delicious. That night, Kakyo organized a party for the crowd, encouraging everyone to eat as much as they wanted. When a man asked if he was serious about serving premium meat and wanted to know where it came from, Kakyo said it was thunder dragon meat, which made everyone laugh, thinking it was a fisherman's story. Alma, a little girl, defended Kakyo, insisting that he never lied. At that time, Alma's father was watching him suspiciously, thinking that he was a little strange. Hey, another character, chimed in and pointed out that Kakyo's ability to provide such good meat in large quantities made him a valuable asset. Old man even made a joke and offered his granddaughter to Kakyo, leaving him embarrassed. The room was full of warmth and laughter, although Kakyo remained somewhat quiet, reflecting in a corner. After the party, Armin invited Kakyo to stay the night, which he happily accepted. Meanwhile, Joey was feeling uncomfortable. Her baby was moving with energy, thanks to the meat that Kakyo brought. Alma was excited about the baby, who would be born in a month. Kaki promised to come back next month, which made everyone happy, especially Jay, who was sure that the baby would be born healthy. Later, Kakyo collapsed on the bed, exhausted but content. He was thinking about how good his life was now, a huge contrast to the problems he had already been through. A long time ago he died in Japan, and was thrown directly into hell for the sins he committed. Reincarnated as a demon, his life was literally hell. He faced several near-death situations, with monstrous creatures and powerful demons. The constant battles between Satan and Zeus did not help, making every day a struggle for survival. Despite the chaos, he clung to life for 2 painful years, fighting as best I could. Over time, he acquired enough wisdom and strength to turn around. Then, in a huge clash between Zeus and Satan, Kakyo ended up in the middle of the fight, and the gigantic explosion of the fight almost took him away. But when he woke up, he was in a completely different world from Earth. It took him a while to understand what was going on, but he soon adapted, pretending to be human, and claiming amnesia. He learned the language and culture of Vila and Olam, which he discovered 3 years ago. Now, as a traveling merchant, his new life seemed like a dream come true. He always laughed at how lucky he was, surprised at how surreal it was to have this second chance, after surviving hell. He now enjoyed good food, a peaceful sleep, and a sense of security. Moreover, the strength he acquired in hell made him a threat in this new world. Persimmon laughed out loud, cursing Satan under his breath, when suddenly Alma appeared in his room, all confused. Her mother had sent her to bring her water, and, with a shy smile, also handed her a pair of leather gloves. Alma had heard that traveling merchants often suffered burns with the ropes when holding the reins of their horses. So she made the gloves as a gift. They fit perfectly in Kakyo's hands, and he praised their skill. Arma, her fingers still rough from so much sewing, was thrilled to know that he would value the gift. Full of excitement, she said that the gloves were for her future husband, and immediately turned red, and ran out of the room. Kakyo thought it was funny, but he knew the truth. Her demon skin was too tough to suffer with ropes, and marrying her was not an option. Seeing Arno's family getting happy made him reflect. Demons don't get old, and I couldn't stand the thought of watching a human family grow old, and stay the same. The next morning, Arno invited Persimmon to go fishing after breakfast, while they cast hooks in the quiet river. Arno jokingly mentioned Alma's courage in giving the gloves to Casil, saying that he was jealous. He shouted that he was not going to allow Casil to stay with his daughter. Which Persimmon completely understood, since he wasn't even a pedophile. They spent the day fishing, and making fun of each other, enjoying the peaceful moment. Kyo didn't understand what Alma saw in him, but Arno explained that maybe it was because Kyo saved his life. Alma was born weak, and the doctors did not expect her to live more than 10 years, but about a year and a half ago. When Keikaku returned from one of his trips, she began to eat the meat and gadgets that he brought. And his health improved dramatically. Arnold admitted that when Keikaku first arrived, having no history and not knowing how to speak his language, he did not know what to do with him. But now Arno and the whole village were grateful to him. In the past life, Keikaku had never felt anything like this. Hearing the residents' thanks was a relief. While they were fishing, Arno picked up the line and brought up the main topic. A summons notice had arrived from the central government, and Arno decided to join the army. Kill asked why so suddenly, but Arno was a reserve soldier. Recently, demonic activity had increased in the Ural Kingdom, Kill being a traveling merchant. He missed this news because he always used teleportation to get around. Arno mentioned that if something happened to him, he wanted Kaki to take care of his soul and the baby, who would be named as. Although it was not certain that it was a child, Arno was convinced. He said the request was just a precaution, as his own father had been devoured by demons. Keikaku hesitated. He is not sure if he could take on this responsibility. But Arnold had faith in him. Even so, Kill didn't make any promises. A while later, Kill's carriage was ready at the border of the village. About to continue your journey, he told Alma that he would return at the end of the next month to meet his little brother. Before leaving, Keikaku called Alma and placed a necklace of dragon scales around her neck as a thank you for the gloves. Alma's face lit up with joy at the gift, and with that they said goodbye. Persimmon traveled around various cities, enjoying time in local bars, doing his job as a merchant, and occasionally exploring ruins. In July he arrived in Bern, the royal capital of the Dragon Kingdom Gassaria. In the last month, he had also fared in commerce, that he was promoted to intermediate merchant, which meant that he could now trade with the nobles. Then, she visited a clothing store to buy some black robes. The former owner of the store was impressed with his rapid rise, and couldn't wait to brag about it in the village. However, it also brought some worrying news. The Holy Knights were on an expedition in the Ural Kingdom, in the Keikaku region. Blessed by the goddess, these knights could detect demons, and every few years they were sent on a special mission to exterminate the demons hiding in neighboring countries. Everything would be calm if that was all, but the rumors said something darker. The knights were accused of exploiting ordinary people, falsely accusing the villagers of being demons and stealing from them. Keikaku didn't stay to listen to the rest. When she warned him to be careful, he had already left. With a purification spell, he erased all traces of himself in the city. Something felt wrong, he knew it, so he used teleportation magic without a second thought. Before long, his carriage was speeding through the forest. As he emerged from among the dense trees, he saw a column of smoke in the distance. Her heart raced, her hands were shaking. He took a deep breath, trying to calm down. It's nothing, he thought, maybe someone is cooking or burning grass in the field. But the bad feeling wouldn't leave him. When he arrived in the village, everything seemed normal. Arno and Alma greeted him with a smile as always, but it was all an illusion. Actually, the village was on fire. Everywhere I looked, houses were on fire, and the bodies of residents lay lifeless, consumed by the fire. Her heart sank when she saw the people she cared about the most. The old doorman, Arno, Alma. Keikaku was standing with everyone lying around, including Ho and Alma, dead at his feet. The rain started to fall, making the scene even more intense. Keikaku lifted Elma's lifeless body, while anger and sadness dominated his mind. He activated his demonic abilities, the Eye of the Devil, and the Spectator of the Soul, to relive the tragic events that had just happened. The villagers had gathered to talk to the holy knights who didn't know any demons there. But the knights insisted that they felt an evil presence and found dragon meat, a parade that only a demon could have. The villagers had a chance to free themselves, handing over to the one who brought the meat, but Arno remained silent, protecting someone he loved very much. In the end, the villagers raised their weapons to defend Kaku. Shaping your destiny. Tears streamed down Kaku's face. It had happened again. Once again, he failed to save anyone. The feeling that the world was cruel, unjust, and completely meaningless was all-consuming. Kaku's anger was overflowing, and he could no longer contain it. Using the demon eye and the soul seeker, he followed the fleeing holy knights, following the tracks left by the horses. He moved on through the mountains until he finally found them. Without hesitation, a spark of light appeared in his hand. He lifted it up into the sky, and a bright meteor streaked through the night, illuminating everything around him. The fireball flew towards the holy knights, the same ones who had uprooted his family once again. They didn't have a chance. The ground shook from the impact of the meteor. In Kaku's mind, the movie went by fast. 2 years. In 2 years, I had lost a lot. Hell was just war and death. He was overpowered, starved, struggled to survive, betrayed, plundered, killed. He consumed the flesh and souls of others until he became more demon than human. When he arrived in the village, his plan was simple: to use people to get information, and, if they did not cooperate, to kill them all. But something changed. He found warmth, care and trust, and with that, a part of his humanity began to return. For the first time in years, he laughed without bitterness. I tried food that wasn't stolen. The hands that reached out to him were warm and offered him something he hadn't felt in a long time. A sense of belonging. But now all that was gone. The pain of losing again swirled inside her. Anger cursed Satan for taking away even the smallest piece of peace he had found. If this was life, an endless loss, he didn't care anymore. I didn't need anything. If everything he achieved was meant to be taken away, then he would destroy everything. Whispered the demon inside him, remembering who I really was. When Kaku began to transform into his true demonic form, he found himself in the depths of his mind, face to face with Elma. She tried to stop him, asking him to control himself, but he knew it was too late. That was his true nature, and there was no way to fight it anymore. He apologized and admitted that he had lost everything. To him, they were the only family he had ever known. Elmo hugged him tenderly, and that simple gesture brought a wave of calm to him. Suddenly, a sound brought him out of that state, crying. Slowly, Kaku returned to his normal form, attracted by the sobs of a baby. He carefully opened a small box and revealed a crying little boy. Around the baby's neck was a necklace of dragon scales. The same one that Kaku had given to Elma. In that instant, the memories of Arno flooded his mind, their conversations, their bond. The child should have been born that month. And there he was, safe and sound. Overwhelmed with emotion, Kakuzo held the baby in his arms, while tears streamed down his face. This was ours, the son Arno entrusted to him, the only person Arno believed could take care of his son. Kaku had once hesitated to make promises, but now, as he held ours close to him, he made an unshakable vow. He would raise that child as if he were his own, to be the happiest person in the world, even if it cost him his own soul. Kaku lamented not having made that promise to Arno before. But now he was determined. Ours would live a life full of happiness, because Kaku's oath was absolute. Meanwhile, in the infernal realm, Satan and Zeus were playing chess, mocking Kaku for using his soul to make a contract. Despite the taunts, they both secretly had high hopes for him. Kaku, a humble demon, had a power that rivaled high-level demons. Zeus even warned Satan that if this minor demon ended up causing problems in another world, he would burn all hell. But in between the small talk, the two supreme gods agreed on something terrifying. The boy who took Kaku, ours, was destined to kill him one day. In the demon realm, inside the great demon emperor's palace, 3 figures were sitting on their thrones. Analyzing recent reports, one of them, wearing a clown mask, confidently reported that his subordinate witnessed a massive explosion caused by a powerful launcher, perhaps as strong as the emperor himself, Selmalinus Luce. The clown added that the insect lord's direct subordinate had already started an investigation on the spot. Tia, one of the 4 strongest generals, was overloaded. The emperor ordered all the subordinates of the demon lords to stay out of this. Hades, sensing his father's discouragement, offered to investigate, but a female figure quickly warned him to have hair on his tongue. Impressed by the caster's ability to go unnoticed even in the celestial realms, Cell did not know who this person was, but assumed that he was not an enemy. While attacking the knights, for now he decided to wait patiently, confident that this individual would eventually fall into his hands. In the human realm, in the nation of the Church of Calamera, a joyful crowd gathered to welcome an important figure. Despite her fear, after learning the news of horse mackerel, the princess blessed them with the protection of the goddess, renewing hope. They believed that the saint would meet the hero predicted in the legend. Sword in hand, Richard Kruger commented to the 58th Pope, Eros of Calamera, that the people were celebrating the birth of his successor. Eros felt the weight lifted off her shoulders, knowing that her daughter brought hope as a saint. Although the aristocrats seemed upset, there was no time for political conflicts. The birth of a saint signaled an imminent danger for the human kingdom. The woman next to the Pope, probably his wife, reassured him by telling him that the child would guide the hero. In the middle of the party, they prayed that the goddess would continue to bless everyone. Now, how does the map of this world work? And it falls down. There are 3 layers, all connected by the world tree. At the top, you have the celestial kingdom, home of the gods, angels, and the goddess of creation. In the middle, the human kingdom, with 4 continents, north, south, east and west, inhabited by humans and demi-humans. And down there, the demonic kingdom, where powerful demons and beasts live, ruled by the demon emperor. Now we are in the human kingdom, where Kaku takes care of a farm. It's been a month and a half since he adopted ours, and milking the goats he teleported from the village of Iwell became part of his morning routine. Ours, full of energy, crawls everywhere, driving Kaku crazy. In addition, she is still learning how to cope with baby tantrums. Being a dad for a month and a half made him a master at milk production. He heats water in a frying pan and cools it down to human body temperature using magic. But the milk wasn't good today. Ours' little face made it clear. That sucks. Depending on the day, the taste of goat's milk changes. That's why sometimes Kaku tries to fix it by mixing nut jelly and sugar cubes. But nothing was done. Ours takes a sip and spits it all out. This ends with Kaku. But he doesn't give up. Try changing your milk-stained clothes, but even that becomes a struggle. Raising a child is much more difficult than I thought. Not that I underestimated him. After all, he had fought in hell for 2,000 years, and mastered thousands of spells. He thought he was going to enjoy being a father, but reality hit him hard. A spell to clean clothes, make our laugh or stop crying, he knows none. This makes him value his mother much more. Finally, after all the chaos, our falls asleep, looking like a little angel. Raising this child was difficult. So difficult that it even reminds you of the times of hell. But the moment he sees Ars's calm little face, it's as if his HP bar instantly recovered. He would like Arno. Z and Alma could see how much Ars has grown. When he is about to fall asleep, he forces himself to stay awake. He still can't sleep. Ars is taking a nap, and that means it's time to put things in order, wash up, cut firewood, take care of the livestock. All this is solved with magic, of course. Finally, he is engaged in agriculture, plowing vast fields, to prepare for the place in Kakwil. Irs left the village, left the Urals, and crossed the ocean to the southern continent, settling in a country called Ilan. Deep in the forest. The change was because he killed the holy knights, and there was a possibility that the ecclesiastical nation would persecute them. He doesn't think they can track him with magic, but he's not risking anything. Now they live in an ancient elven fortress that he found a long time ago. Embedded in the side of a mountain, it once protected a road, but is now abandoned. Despite being in a tropical rainforest, the semi-underground rooms are still cool and comfortable. This place is one of the hiding places he has kept since his days of wandering, before settling in the village of Jolan. It is now his perfect and hidden home. Although they are hidden deep in the forest, Cockle risks nothing. There are people with heightened senses. Like the holy knights, he created a barrier to hide any traces of magic. Back in hell, his house would be demolished the day after it was built, so he is optimistic that this place will be expanded. Maybe one day I can turn it into a castle. After all, This is the house of your dreams that you have been waiting for 2,000 years. But then, a sudden explosion behind him takes him out of his thoughts. Rushing inside to check on Ars, she finds that the baby is perfectly fine, although the roof is not quite there. Because there's a giant hole in it. Confused, Cockle wonders what just happened, until he sees Ars sneeze, and a fiery explosion comes out. It seems that little Ars was born with magical powers. Kakio was curious. He thought that this was normal in this world, but most people in Yo couldn't use magic. Then an explanation arises in your mind. Dragon meat. For about a year and a half, he shared his favorite dragon meat with the village every time he returned. During this time, the Ars was conceived and born. If the magical power of dragon meat affected JY's pregnancy, this might explain why Ars was born with dragon magic in his human body. Kyo can't help but worry that he saddled Lars with a dangerous inheritance. Living a normal life among humans can be difficult for the child, and to make matters worse, Ars not only sneezes fire. He also releases high-pressure water when he urinates. To make life easier, Kaku created many small puppets, kakas, which he could control at will. He put them to work on various types of tasks. But there was a problem, they only moved when he actively controlled them. No problem, I was planning to create the R alone anyway. Compared to 2,000 years of war in hell, raising a child should be very simple. Outside the house, however, a group of goblins is hiding behind the bushes, watching. 2 weeks later, things weren't looking good. Cockwell was exhausted, holding Ars who was crying in his arms, between bottles, diapers, crying at night. And Ars escaping every 2 hours. Kibble was managing to keep up, calm the baby, and ran to do chores, take care of the field and animals. Food supplies were running low, and I knew I would have to go out hunting or work soon. But Ars wasn't making things easy. A cough could cause an explosion, a laugh could create a tornado, and don't get me started on water cannons during piss storms. When he cried, Cockle was sure that this was not going to be a second life in hell. Totally exhausted. All Cockle wanted was an hour of sleep. Just one. After Ars finally fell asleep, Kakyo couldn't help but look at his adorable little face before collapsing next to him. While sleeping, Kakwil dreamed of an argument with his father. He wanted to continue his studies and pay the rent with his own job. Your father never understood. She recalled walking into her room afterwards, staring at her dead mother's altar. Suddenly, Kakwil wakes up startled, feeling danger. 3 goblins were right behind him, ready to attack. Instinctively, Keiki eliminated them with his own hands. But something was wrong. Ars was no longer there. The crib was empty. The only possible explanation is that the Rs had been hijacked right under their noses. In a panic, Cockle ran out of the house, activating his Devil Eye and Soul Seeker to locate the kidnappers who had fled into the forest. His mind was a mess as he ran, following his trail. Guilt tormented him. How could he be so careless? I was very confident that I could create Rs alone. Now all I could do was hope that the A was still safe. After running through the forest, Kakwil saw an old man who looked terrified, and an elf who was defeating the goblin alone. While holding Rs in his arms, their gazes met. The elf was calm, while Cockle's face was clearly full of panic. His mind raced, wondering who this woman was, a dark elf, and also a slave, here in the middle of nowhere. But his concern subsided when he noticed Rs waving his little hand. At first, Kakwil had difficulty communicating with the old man due to the language barrier, desperately trying to explain to him that he was the father of Rs. Fortunately, the old man spoke a language that Cockle could understand. He explained that they were on their way to the holy city when they came across elves carrying a baby. The old man then insisted that the elf, Asa, return the child to his father. Just as Asa moved to hand Rs to her, she hesitated and pushed him back. She questioned if Kaku was really the father of the child. Her suspicion was based on the fact that they were in the Great Vi Forest, a place that was said to be the home of a fire dragon. This unexplored jungle was far from the main road, and seeing a foreigner lightly dressed with a child seemed suspicious. They could easily mistake him for a kidnapper. His doubts forced Kyo to pause and reflect. Was he really a worthy father for ours? He wasn't sure, but if he knew one thing for sure, that child was the most precious person in the world to him. Kakyo's sincerity was so evident that Ursa apologized for her earlier suspicion. With that, ours was returned to him safe and sound. When they were about to separate, Keiki called him to Asa, expressing his deep gratitude for saving his son. Ursa, visibly shocked, ignored him, reminding him that she was just a slave. Not long after, Kakil and ours went their separate ways from Asa and the old man, but something was bothering him. He had been avoiding him until she asked that question. I always knew that ours was just him, and living this isolated life was to protect the child. But deep down, Kyo realized that it wasn't entirely for the sake of ours. It was by himself. I was scared. Fear of letting more people become important to them. Of the suffering that would come if they lost. Kyo had dragged our into this lonely life because of his own selfishness. Out of fear, he kept ours away from experiences such as friendships, love and dreams. But was this really what a father would do? Kako knew what it was like to take care of others, and although he feared the pain of loss, this time it would be different. He promised never to lose the people who mattered again. To become a real father and fulfill the promise he made that day, he whispered to ours, asking him what he should do next. Thinking about the faces that should have been part of Arno's family. Joe and Elma. He finally knew what he had to do. With renewed energy, Kakyo raised the R's high. Determined to be the best father possible, he decided that they would find someone to accompany them. To become a part of their family as a mother. Deep in the canyon of the Heavenly Waterfall, located in the southern part of the Great Fee Forest. A group of adventurers were rushing to escape, desperate to get out alive. They couldn't believe what they had just been through. Convinced that they had put enough distance between themselves and the dragon, one of them assured the others that they were protected by a barrier that concealed both his presence and his magical aura. The group had made great sacrifices, 8 combat slaves, and 4 S-rank demon monkeys, only to plunge the fire dragon into the waterfall basin. It seemed unthinkable that the dragon had survived unharmed, but still, they had obtained the dragon eggs to make up for their losses. And everyone seemed to have come to some kind of agreement about the next step. Suddenly, the ground began to shake violently, someone between them. Keeping a close watch, he realized with surprise that the dragon had survived. Worse still, he had evaporated the entire waterfall basin with a single blast of his flaming breath. Although clearly injured, the dragon managed to rise from the basin and fly to the west, moving away from them. The group, still protected by the barrier, could only wonder where he was going. Some thought he might be heading towards a nearby village. Convinced that if this were the case, the city would soon be nothing more than a memory. As they continued on, the fire dragon had turned into a real walking disaster. But before we get into the history of Kaku, here is the ranking system of demonic beasts and demons. At the lowest level, the goblins were rated F, barely being a threat. As the ratings rose, so did the danger. The A-rated Viven represented a major challenge. The middle-ranked demons were classified S, but there were special cases, such as dragons and higher-ranked demons, categorized as special and feared S, the most fearsome of all. The scene changes to a busy market where people crowd, eager to get their hands on various products. Kaku and the R's were also there, although Kaku felt a wave of nervousness invade his body. It had been centuries since he had been among so many people. It wasn't just any market, it was Pumul, a port town along the Elboat River, the closest town to his hideout, deep in the forest, about 80 miles to the north. Pomolo was strategically located near the main road that stretched across the country, making it a hub for foreign merchants navigating the slow river. On the other side of that river was the territory of the fire dragon, a place where no human being dared to go thanks to its privileged location. Pumul also had a thriving black market, famous for the slave trade. Now you might be wondering why Kaku and the R's were there. Well, the reason was simple. Kaku needed to buy a slave to help him take care of the R's. After the kidnapping incident a few days ago, he realized that creating R's on its own was no longer an option. He was not looking for a life partner, marriage was not on his mind. What she needed was a caregiver, someone to relieve her of the crushing weight of the responsibility of caring for the child. While wandering around the market, he couldn't help but notice the stares of the locals, which made him feel a little insecure. It didn't take long to find out, because his outfit caught the attention of two scoundrels who were watching him from a distance, clearly with ulterior motives. Before he knew it, Kakuza found himself dodging the rogues and barely managing to escape the pursuit. Now, sitting on the side of the street, Kaku's eyes scanned the rows of slaves parading through the market. This was turning out to be much more difficult than he had thought. None of the slaves he saw seemed to be a good candidate for what he needed. A trusted person to help you create the R's. In this country, slaves used to be criminals who lost their freedom, but what Kaku was looking for was different. She needed someone she could trust enough to leave R's alone, and able to deal with the girl's occasional outbursts of magic. Until now it seemed that finding such a person would be a great challenge. In fact, there was a perfect candidate, Asa, the dark elf I had met in the forest the day before. She was strong, reliable and well-educated. She was exactly what Kaken needed. But he let the opportunity slip away. Now he was frustrated thinking that he had missed his chance, and doubted that he would find someone like her again. While Kaku was trying to decide his next move, he overheard two people talking excitedly about a great opportunity. They were right. According to what they heard from the merchants, Sabas, the one with the discerning eye, was coming to the city. It was not announced publicly, so it seemed that a big secret deal would happen soon. Kaku's ears perked up. Are you talking about Luz Sebastia? I had heard a lot of rumors about him. Sebas was the president of the huge Sebastia company, which dealt with everything from food to gold. Most importantly, slaves. In just one generation, he became the largest merchant in the entire continent, supplying even the royal family of Lawrence. This guy was a real big shot. For Kaku, this was fantastic news. Although he was a timber merchant from across the sea, he knew the name Sebas. If anyone had what Kaku needs, it would definitely be Sebas. With that in mind, Kaku and the R's had a new goal, to locate Sabas with keen eyes and introduce themselves to him. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Elbit River, in an abandoned house near Pummel, Urs sat in silence, lost in thought. He kept remembering the encounter he had with that strange man in the Fki forest. Why did she trust him so easily, after everything she had been through? She thought that she had lost the ability to trust someone. Just at that moment, a voice called her and told her that the boat was ready. It was the old man who was with She understood and got up from her seat. Finally, the identity of the old man who was with was revealed. He was Sabas, the same man everyone in the city was talking about. Back on the busy streets of Pomul, Kaku found himself in a ridiculous chase. An angry old dwarf was at his heels, shouting that his tent had been burned to the ground. In fact, it wasn't even Kaku's fault. Ars sneezed and accidentally set the place on fire, running to save his life. Kaku hid in an alley, only to find himself cornered in a cul-de-sac. The dwarf caught up to him, furious. Kaku, trying to calm the spirits, offered to pay for the damages, but the dwarf was not at all willing to accept. He called Kaku a con man, convinced that he was being deceived. Just when things seemed to be at their worst, the crowd around them began to panic. Looking up at the sky, Kaku saw, with a sinking heart, a huge fire dragon roared over their heads, burning buildings left and right. His chest tightened, not because he was afraid to fight him, but because he was afraid for his Rs. I couldn't let anything happen to him. Kak had no idea why the fire dragon was there, but the chaos was actually a blessing in disguise. Maybe now he could escape, but while the flames engulfed the city, memories of the burning of his own village flashed through his mind. His heart raced, torn between running and facing the destruction head-on. His emotions were in an uproar. Should I really run away again? As Seba's ship was already approaching Pu Mole, the scene ahead left them in dismay, chaos, flames, and the unmistakable roar of a fire dragon. Seba's immediately suggested that they turn around and return to the coast, but Ursel was not willing to accept it. He saw the slave children who were left behind in their desperate flight. Without a second thought, he jumped off the ship, running from ship to ship towards the burning harbor. Meanwhile, Kaku was frozen in the city center, overwhelmed with indecision. If he were to fight the dragon, he would run the risk of exposing himself to everyone. Even worse, if he really defeated him, the church would surely find out about his existence. I really should put ours in danger just to save a bunch of strangers. He told himself that leaving was the right decision, that he had not been mistaken, but deep down doubt consumed him. Before Kaku could act, an anchor flew through the air and wrapped around the dragon's left leg. The chain tightened, restricting the beast's movements. Kaku's eyes widened in surprise. The anchor came from one of the ships in the harbor. And then, like a blurred blur, Ila shot against the current, moving quickly towards the dragon. She dodged a stream of flaming breath, with a powerful leap, landed right on the creature's face, brandishing her two swords. She aimed at the dragon's back. The attack connected, but Mal made a scratch on the surface. The dragon's hard scales turned out to be almost impenetrable. One of his swords broke under the pressure. Undeterred, I quickly improvised. He tied a broken sword string and threw it around the dragon's leg, using it to swing over the beast. From this new position, he clipped his wings with all his might. His sword pierced through the left wing, causing the dragon to spin out of control and collide with the ground. The fight was far from over, but now the advantage was his. Standing on top of a nearby building, Asa stared into the fallen dragon's eyes. Ready for the next round, Kaku realized in an instant who was fighting the fire dragon. It was Asa, the dark elf I would meet before. The dragon's slow movements were the result of the many injuries it had already suffered. Although I didn't seem to understand why the creature was so angry and attacking the city. He knew that his chances of winning were slim, but he believed that he could at least buy enough time for the townspeople to escape. I had cast the twilight spell, temporarily dazzling the dragon, and strengthened his body with magic to move at high speed. This allowed him to freely attack the beast, and the people of the city applauded, convinced that the dragon could be defeated, but Kakio did not see things like that. It was obvious to him that, despite the incessant efforts of the wing, he was barely managing to cause any real damage, and the blows he was getting were already starting to show. She knew that if things continued like this, she would soon be so exhausted that she would no longer be able to fight. Worried about the growing danger, Kakil asked the crowd to flee. But, just as things were getting grim, the wing was thrown against a nearby building. The debris from the crash threatened the people below, but the wing managed to stop everything in time. However, it was clearly out of balance, and Kakil realized that the dragon was preparing to spit fire into the densely populated area. The flame spread through the crowded streets, causing people to scatter in all directions, desperate to save their lives. In the midst of the chaos, Kakui managed to catch up with Urs in a small alley. He felt grateful when he remembered how she had saved him the other day, and knew that he could not let the person who was protecting his son die there. Without much time to waste, Kale remembered something important, as he had cast himself a binding spell before. I needed her to do it again. But this time it had to be strong enough to blind everyone in the city. The wing seemed confused by the request, but then trembled at the sight of Kakuyo's serious face, wondering if he could do it. He succeeds, but only for a short time. That's enough. That was all Kakuyo needed to execute his plan. After passing the Arza hearse to him, Kill turned to face the dragon with determination. I wasn't going to let the dragon take any more lives. It's about time to end this. Urs was speechless for a moment, then let out a laugh and, without hesitation, cast the spell Kazil had asked for. As he did so, a thought crossed his mind. Just like before. He felt a strange certainty that Kakil was telling the truth. I couldn't explain it, but I trusted him. Meanwhile, Kakil casually walked towards the dragon, even getting his attention, daring the beast to notice him. The dragon did not hesitate, and immediately launched an attack, but with a single precise blow to his chest. Keikaku ended the dragon's life in the blink of an eye. Urs was in shock, unable to believe how he had defeated the huge creature so easily. In the midst of the chaos, Keikaku calmly approached Ayla, who was holding Urs in her arms. Without saying a word, he knelt down in front of her as if making a proposal. Then, with a serious tone, he made his order. I wanted Asa to be the mother of that child. A few months ago, in the magical land of Lurien, inside the royal castle shrine, Urs was given a secret mission known as the Twilight Era, a trusted agent of the royal family. A mysterious man tasked him with the task of telling him that night, in the ancient knight's quarters, a merchant from a dark guild would meet with a noble to exchange a forbidden magical artifact, one that could threaten the security of the entire kingdom. His mission was to assassinate the merchant before the deal. Urs executed his mission perfectly, quietly killing a masked figure for the future of his country. But when his sword pierced through his chest, the voice that escaped from the masked man was surprisingly familiar. Her heart sank. He was the king, he had fallen into a trap. The wing immediately realized that it was stuck, but it was already too late. The king did not enslave her. She tried to defend herself, insisting that she was only following orders from Elliot Lawrence, the first prince. But the truth had already been distorted. She shouted that it was a conspiracy, and warned that the royal family was still in danger, but no one listened to her. Not even his brother came to his aid. While he was in his cell, he heard rumors from the guards. They whispered that the king was in a coma. Because the king did not fear reprisals from the Shadow clan, and she was executed. And her disappointment at not being sentenced to death, they assumed that no one would buy a slave who betrayed the crown. And now Sabas had the task of selling it, as his mind was confused, and he finally realized that he had fallen into a trap. Trust seemed impossible now. He wondered how the people he trusted the most fell so easily. Guilt dominated her. With his bare hands he almost killed the king, a man he respected and loved like a father. She could not forgive herself. There was no turning back from this. At that moment Kui arrived and pulled her out of the dirty Zelda. With his help, they reached Elin, the land of the elves, where someone might be interested in acquiring it. To avoid the inspections, they took the old Bigway road that passes by nothing. While passing through the Bigway forest, they found a leprechaun carrying a baby. Driven by a desperate need to redeem herself, the wing saved the child. He wanted to make up for his past, but he had no idea how. At a time when the world seemed to reject her, Keikaku was grateful for having saved her son. Returning to the present moment, Kil suddenly asked her to become R's mother. Urs was surprised by the request, and they both blushed with shame. Kaku's words slipped out, and he quickly realized that he didn't mean it that way. Keikaku nervously tried to clarify his words, but before he could finish, Sabosh arrived and called Asa. It was then that Keikaku realized that the old man accompanying her was Sabosh. His moment was to live. Jack came in just as they were holding hands, and he felt that he was invading the moment. When they arrived in the city, Sabosh saw the dragon's corpse, and wondered if the wing was behind it. The wing was about to explain, but Keikaku joined the conversation, telling a made-up story. The ass's attention was focused on a group of children that Sabosh had saved. They were clearly illegal slaves, because they had no magic marks and were terrified by the dragon. Crying to return home, he reassured Iras, hugging them and offering them words of comfort. Sabosh and his men planned to send the children to the church in the holy city, but he asked Asa what he wanted to do. Sabosh had already heard that Kale intended to buy her as a slave. Keikaku confirmed this but said he needed to ask something first. He reintroduced himself as a mid-level merchant from the Bayou Kingdom, far to the north beyond the Laura Sea, and reiterated his request. He wanted Asa to be the mother of that child, or in other words, let her be his wife. He explained that after seeing her bravery, he knew that she had something that he did not have, the most important thing. She was someone I could trust. If she accepted, he would annul the slavery contract. I wanted her to respond as an equal, not as a slave. With great regret, Asa refused. He could not accept freedom without redeeming himself for his crime. He confessed that he had committed a serious crime that, in his opinion, deserved the death penalty. She was not worthy to be a mother. Although disappointed, Keikaku tried to keep his spirits up by apologizing for his unreasonable request. Breaking the silence, Saba mentioned that he needed time to prepare for the match. Urs offered to help, but Saba refused, saying his injuries would only slow him down. She asked him to rest, while secretly wanting to give Casil more time to calm her down. A while later, Keikaku was tending to Ash's wounds while she was holding Urs. While carefully treating his injured legs, Keikaku used his devil eye to read his true emotions. She could feel a deep mixture of disappointment, distrust, and there is a lingering loyalty to someone who had probably betrayed her. His soul was in an uproar, heavy with guilt and regret. That probably explained why she rejected his offer. The problem had deeper roots. Most people would have collapsed by now. But Era kept calm and hid her inner confusion so as not to worry others. It was her dark elf nature, or maybe a maternal instinct she had since birth. If anything, Keikaku felt even more attracted to her. He needed that kind of devotion. After he finished treating his wounds, there was a strange tension between them, but when Urs looked at Keikaku, he began to understand why she trusted him from the very beginning. He had asked her to take care of his son, showing his faith in her. No one had ever trusted her so much before. When she started to open up, fear took over her. What if she was betrayed again? She hesitated, still afraid to trust someone. Breaking the heavy atmosphere, Keikaku kindly told her that she disagreed with her statement that she was unfit to be a mother. He did not know the crime she had committed, but he knew that the hands she thought were stained with sin had saved countless lives. To him, that was all that mattered. Despite her past mistakes, she still risked her life to do the right thing, and Keikaku needed that strength, for both him and her. And Urs wanted to believe him, but the doubt persisted. Sensing her hesitation, Persimmon pressed gently, wondering if suffering forever was really the atonement he wanted. If her crime deserved the death penalty, she would be trapped in slavery forever, forced to work hard, and maybe even accused of things she didn't do. Is this really what she thinks the atonement should be? He realized how deeply he had sunk into guilt. She wasn't sure if giving up was the only way to pay for her mistakes. The idea of being happy with Keikaku seemed out of reach, so he clung to the punishment. She vented by saying that someone as strong as him could never understand her feelings. Their fight woke up Ash, who started crying loudly, cutting the tension. A's instinct took over and quickly comforted the child. Keikaku looked over with a gentle smile, acknowledging that although she was strong, he couldn't take care of Urs like she could. He admitted that he was bad at tasks like changing diapers, and that he once got so distracted that his son was kidnapped. He commented that strength and honesty alone were not enough to navigate through life, and that's why they needed each other. Keikaku offered to help her find a way of atonement, as long as she didn't help raise her son. She wanted to understand what the atonement meant to her, believing that the answer would come eventually. This made Arza remember his past, especially the sense of justice he once had. He recalled visiting an orphanage with a king and realizing that his silent visits were part of his atonement. For the centuries of war he had fought in, for 1,000 years, his wars had orphaned countless children, the future of the kingdom. During their conversation, the king warned him that one day he might have to get his hands dirty for the sake of the kingdom. He said that when that time came, he should remember that his power was intended for the children's future. This memory brought clarity too, helping him realize that his true atonement was to carry out the king's will, creating a world where children could grow up laughing and happy. Seeing this change in her, Keikaku smiled and offered her his hand, suggesting that they start by making sure their son could laugh happily. Although she was heretical, tormented by the betrayal of her past, Keikaku held her hand tightly. He reassured her, confidently promising that he would never cheat on her and that he would prove it. When Asa made the bold decision to jump towards La Pummel, Sebas couldn't help but feel a wave of anxiety. One of his subordinates suggested that they return to the coast immediately, clearly against the idea of following Era. I couldn't understand why Sebas was so willing to risk everything crossing dangerous borders for someone who was just a slave. But Sebas had his own code. Taking care of everyone, even a simple slave, was part of his beliefs. Besides, someone important had personally asked him to show her the respect she deserved. Back to the present, Ise felt completely disoriented, not knowing what had happened. Kaku just laughed and explained that it was teleportation magic. After all, it was his first time. But what really surprised her was his sudden appearance high up in the sky, with his sweet home clearly visible below. A few hours earlier, in an abandoned house in Paul, Jur had wondered about the evidence that Kaku would not betray her. His solution was simple: he used the slavery contract. Then, Kaku made a magic mark on his chest. And Sebas explained that slave contracts were a form of magic that imposed a relationship of master and servant. Normally, this allowed the masters to tie the slaves and control their freedom. Baku seemed strangely enthusiastic about the idea and was laughing as if it was no big deal. Elsa was perplexed, not understanding what she was trying to prove. Kaku then explained with a smile that from now on, they would be each other's slave masters, thanks to their mutual slavery contract. Betrayal would be impossible. Watching the strange arrangement unfold, Sano was able to avoid commenting that it was almost like a wedding. To finalize the contract, they literally sealed the deal, exchanging blood on each other's marks. Now, in the big forest, at the base of Kaku, the trio had arrived safely. Urs even put on a maid outfit, ready for this new chapter in her life. Kakwil showed it with pride, explaining that the place was an old fort that he had renovated, perfect for a hidden base. Upon entering, the mess was undeniable. Things were scattered everywhere, and the room looked more like a warehouse than a living space. I tried to adapt to the strange surroundings, noticing a corner emanating dark magic. Bones and fur of dragons and other powerful beasts piled up, and Kakwil explained that he had collected them over time. Selling everything at once would seem suspicious, so the inventory kept growing. Asa couldn't help but wonder who this man really was. Everything about him seemed far beyond the norm. He had defeated a dragon with ease, and used teleportation and flying magic without a single summoning. The more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that Kakwil had to be someone extraordinary, maybe a legendary hero, or even a demonic general. His claim to be only a medium-sized trader from the north sounded ridiculous. His face, with that sly smile, only increased her suspicions, reminding her of a con man. But despite all this, he reached out to help her seek the atonement. Then he wanted to discuss the terms of the contract, reminding her of the agreement. She would become Ri's mother. In return, he would help her make peace with her past. Her path to atonement involved helping orphanages, so she decided to start by being the best mother possible. While Kyo went to take care of the fields and livestock. Before sunset, I was ready to work on cleaning the house. Time passed quickly while she took care of the tasks. Clean the messy room, and put the operating system to sleep. But while I was working, discomfort began to arise. Seeing Minu and moving around, and helping her with homework, a feeling of distrust came over her. I couldn't help but think that, after all, he was hiding something. What would lead someone as powerful as him to hide? Was there a deeper plan at work? She tried not to delve into it because she also had a dark past. Kakuno did more than try to prove his worth. Saving her, becoming her slave, and earning her trust. Little by little she knew deep down that she already trusted him. The real problem wasn't him, it was her. With her hands stained from her past actions, she couldn't help but wonder if she was really ready to be a mother. While these doubts, she didn't realize how exhausted she was. When Kaku returned and opened the door, he found her lying on the floor, unconscious. In his dream, Ez returned to his first memories, reliving moments I thought I'd forgotten. He found himself much younger, training alongside his real brother in the village. All men became warriors, and women, if they were talented enough, could join them. But during the training, the fighters were separated from the non-combatants. That was the law of the people. Even his real mother wasn't around much. His father, the village head, was a strict teacher. And if she didn't do the best she could, she would fall behind in relation to her brother and friends, those with whom she competed every day in her little world. It was as if I didn't even have a mother. At least that's how I remembered it. Suddenly, Ursul's eyes opened, and reality slowly returned to her. She was lying in bed, hooked up to an 4-drip. Next to her was Kaku, sleeping, but he had clearly been by her side the whole time. She whispered his name, and he woke up in a panic. With tears in his eyes, he felt relieved and told her that he had been unconscious for 2.5 days. I was so grateful that she had finally woken up. Hearing this, I tried to sit up, but Kakula gently stopped, reminding him that he still had a bit of a fever. It was not a surprise, given the severity of his injuries. He felt guilty for not letting her rest properly after that fight, even apologizing for his inability to use healing magic. That last part took her by surprise, as she hadn't realized that there was magic that Kaku couldn't use. As he changed the fever compress on his forehead, he admitted that his abilities had limits. If only he could use all kinds of magic, he joked that it would be quite amazing. Then, R's crying interrupted the moment. It was about time for him to drink his milk. Casil needed to leave, but before he left, he handed Urs a small doll, and told her that if she needed anything, she could call her. It was an enchanted portable miniature with a spell that allowed it. The owner of the doll communicated with her, no matter the distance. She also mentioned that she made a vegetable soup with preservation magic, which would be warm and fresh, ready for her to eat whenever she wanted. When Kaku left the room, reminding her to eat slowly, she couldn't help but smile softly without noticing. As he looked around, he noticed the small details. Employee clothes attended, a work table full of documents and herbs, and a lot of bandages. She realized that while she was unconscious, he had taken care of her and a baby at the same time. This idea brought back the memory of his own mother, when she was seriously injured during training, lying in bed, as now. Her mother was there too, taking care of her. Era couldn't remember much of the conversation, but she had a strong feeling that her mother had apologized. The mother had turned against the father at that moment, and had a bruised cheek. The memory was not a big deal, but just having his mother by his side was one of the happiest moments of his childhood. This is how a mother figure is, she realized, even if the child does something stupid, or becomes a stranger. If you dedicate yourself as a father or mother, love will come to them. With that thought, she felt that she could also do this. Become the mother that the child needed. With renewed determination, she sat down, ready to eat the soup Kakul had prepared. The fork he had in his hand was a minor inconvenience, so he casually took it off, and took the hot aromatic soup. He blew gently and tasted it. It was exactly what she needed. Soup after a storm always brought a special comfort. The next day, Asa was already on his feet, feeling strong. Before Kaku could ask how she was, the Rs was already crawling, trying to escape from the diaper change. And of course, the room was a mess again, even after Asa cleaned everything up before she passed out. Things got even worse when Air started crying. His thunder magic went haywire, and, well, now there was a hole in the wall again. And so he had begun his journey as this strange family. Just before Kakuya made his contract, Saba was surprised when Kaku said that he wanted to become a slave. Kaku had his reasons, but without a legitimate excuse, this would be illegal. Then Kaku came up with a plan. He would buy Firma, but as he did not have enough money, he would borrow from Savas and become a slave to debts. Later Hertz would buy it, even without having the money. Kako thought carefully, taking out a bunch of magical beast materials from her magic bag to hand them to him. Sebas seemed satisfied, as the materials were worth more than enough. Urs, on the other hand, was confused. Why go through all this complicated process? Kakul explained that it was his way of showing that he trusted her, leaving Arisa blushing with shame. After they started living together, I had a complaint. Why did they always end up in the air after teleporting? Kakio explained that without marking specific locations, their teleportation could only take them to a general location. And appearing in the sky was better than accidentally appearing underground or underwater. When EC insisted on knowing why I hadn't put any note, Kakio admitted that it was just an inconvenience. But at her insistence, he quickly prepared one to avoid future scolding. Soon after, they were about to have their first family reunion. The theme, R's magical explosions. This kid is cute, but it's scary when he loses control. Before we dive into that, here's a quick recap. In the human realm, humanoids are divided into several races, but they are all grouped together as humans. There are 5 main races here: humans, elves, including dark elves, dragons, dwarves, and beasts. Now, why did they need a family reunion? It all started that morning, when Arzo was tidying up the yard before waking up Persimmon. I was juggling cleaning the house, changing Arz's diaper, and bathing the little one. It had only been 2 days since Asa recovered from her fever, but her routine had already changed a lot, with her tasks divided. Kaku had more time to train, and got better at controlling his Minya. Hers was super capable, and knew how to do everything, but one thing bothered him. When it came time to feed Arz, the baby just wanted the wing. Arz was getting very attached to the wing, and this woke up Kaku's competitive spirit. Of course, I could make breakfast, but he wasn't going to miss it. So he confidently cooked a horned boar steak, hoping to prove that he too could be trusted. When it was ready, it looked delicious. Yuusha said it was amazing, but Kaku knew something was wrong. It was sweet, as if he had mistaken sugar for salt. Asa, for her part, said that every family has its special flavors, and she almost took over the cooking herself. That's when reality hit him. She was too good at everything. Could I keep up? Just as I was dealing with this thought, Az started crying. Kaku thought the baby needed to poop, but no, he needed to pee. This was the second time I witnessed one of Az's magical explosions, which led to the suggestion of a family reunion. He couldn't help the strange feeling that all this caused him. Kakuya had told him that Arz was born a little special, but that wasn't the case. It was noticed something strange. Arz only used magic when Kakyo was the one taking care of him. Kaku tried to stay calm, but when he thought about it, he was right. Ursa concluded that he was the reason for Ar's magical explosions. At first, they thought that our magic was simply not controlled. But maybe that wasn't it. Maybe Kaku was using magic to keep Arz entertained whenever Arz had an outburst. Kaku just smiled instead of getting angry. Now Arz probably thought that using magic made Kaku happy. Ursa's explanation made sense, and Kaku started to panic, because he was absolutely right. He backed himself into a corner, realizing that it was all his fault, muttering about how he had failed as a father. Urs, trying to comfort him, suggested that now that they understood the cause, they could control the R explosions. He assured him that as long as he kept giving his best, R would feel his good intentions. However, Kaku was wrong, seeing how he handled everything much better than him feeling like shit. Meanwhile, Asa suspected that Arz was just trying to make Kaku happy in his own way. In a fit of frustration, Kaku raised his voice towards Arz, scaring the baby and making him cry. As expected, there was another explosion of fire magic that hit Kaku. As always, the days passed and, no doubt, the earth was right. As soon as Kaku changed the way he interacted with R, as she suggested, the magical explosion stopped. However, Kaku found himself in a wheat field, lost in his thoughts, wondering if he was really needed in the family. He quickly pushed that thought aside, convincing himself that he was the only one who could take care of livestock and the field skills he learned at Ioli. When the wheat ripened, they wouldn't have to worry about food for a while. Or at least I hoped so. But then the rains came that lasted 4 days, and completely destroyed the wheat field. Urs, knowing a little about agriculture, explained that the crops of the north simply did not adapt to such a climate. This only worsened Kaku's self-esteem. Everything he tried seemed to go wrong, and besides the Rs was still only attached to the wing, further increasing his envy. Kaku took a deep breath, patted his cheeks, and decided he needed to get out of the house for a while. The ruined wheat fields were a mess and I needed to figure out how to make some money. Your plan. Go to the merchant guild in the holy city and have something happen. Arriving at Asa, the beating heart of the federal kingdom of Elan, Kaku wasted no time. The guild employees gasped when he handed over his credentials, especially Seba's letter. It was clear that this was not just any record. With everything in order, Kyle was ready to make some connections and gather information. It wasn't long before he met Aurain and Sharon, merchants who informed him about the difficult situation in the region. Apparently, the LBV River overflowed again, closing roads, and making it impossible for merchants to transport goods. To make matters worse, a fire dragon had recently appeared, and the dark guilds were fighting over the remains. The victor, Bedra, sealed the roads, leaving the rest of the route full of dangerous magical beasts. Karen added that getting help from knights or hunters was out of the question. Everyone was busy dealing with other issues. And the rainy season even brought aquatic beasts to the area. Kyo asked why they didn't take the route themselves, and Sura abruptly replied that they didn't have the money for that. The next day, Kyo surprised him by presenting him with a magical beast leg. Sura couldn't believe it and accused him of lying. How could he have killed the beast if he had been in the city the day before? Kaku smiled and said that he had hired mercenaries to solve this for him. The truth was that there were no mercenaries. Kaku had dealt with the beast alone. Distrust floated in the air as Rurin and Sharon wondered what Kaku really wanted. After all, they were bad traders, but Kaku had everything under control. His plan was simple. In exchange for the beast's paw, he wanted to access the market prices, sales channels, and some key presentations to your business partners. That night, Kaku told Urs about his day, including the two merchants he met. Apparently they were brothers and salt merchants. They agreed to introduce him to a transportation company they worked with. Urs, speaking through Herminia, was amazed at how much she had accomplished in just 2 days. Of course, that compliment went straight to Kaku's head. He loved hearing that. I didn't want to feel useless. Kaku commented that he would be busy the next day, so he might not be able to answer his calls. Hertz understood and wished him luck, which only increased his enthusiasm. He couldn't wait to show Urs that even he could be a trustworthy father. The next day, with the help of the merchant brother, Kaku reached an agreement with Silga, a shipping merchant from Elan. Silga was impressed by Kaku's alleged connections with powerful mercenaries, especially during the dangerous rainy season. Just as Kaku was getting into the rhythm of the meeting, he heard a call. Arasa. Ignoring the call for now, he went about his business. That day had to go well. He had felt like a failure at home, and if he couldn't succeed there, what was the point? Finally, the meeting ended successfully, although Kakyus felt a little dazed by the alcohol that was there that night. As she collapsed on the bed at the inn, she couldn't stop thinking about how well everything had gone. He couldn't wait to get the compliments when he got home, but then the memory of the ignored call hit him like a brick. Panic seized him when he remembered that the golem had been calling all day. In desperation, he called again. As soon as S replied, it became clear why I was trying to contact him. Ars had fallen ill. Sweat ran down Kaku's face as he teleported to the houses in a hurry. When he broke down the door, he was greeted by hot steam, and there was the wing, looking terrified. He explained that Ars had had a fever around noon, but it had started to warm up in the last 30 minutes. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have rashes. I was breathing normally, but I've never seen a fever like this before. Kaku's mind was racing, and panic took over him. How could I make a medicine if I didn't even know the cause? Thoughts swirled with worry and self-criticism until Urzo came back to reality. He said he was going to get some herbs that usually help with the fever. Kaku tried to stop her. It was the middle of the night, and it was raining a lot, but Ez insisted, saying that he could see well in the dark. Besides, he should stay with Ars, not her. That hurt. Kakuya felt useless, and his words only deepened that feeling. But then Ars, feverish and weak, took her finger with his little hand. As comforting. It was the first time Kakurment had seen her son, offering him strength even in such a vulnerable state. Before she knew it, he turned back faster than expected, holding a strange Gary. He explained that it was from the Devil's Staff, a magical tree that grows quickly, absorbing large amounts of magical power. Without wasting time, he tied the branch to Ars's arm, and the tree immediately began to sprout, glowing warmly as its branches spread. Relief flooded her. It worked as she expected. I had heard about this from a village elder a long time ago. Sometimes, babies of powerful magical races, such as elves, could not control their growing magic, causing fevers like ours. The devil staff absorbed his excess magic and soon the fever would disappear. Kaku's legs weakened from the relief. He wouldn't have accomplished any of this without Asa. He praised her, but at the same time, he could not help but criticize himself. He was so focused on his own flaws that he ignored everything that was happening around him. He had made a contract with Asa because he couldn't do it alone, but instead he let jealousy get the better of him. He tried to compensate for his failures with work and, in the process, neglected or spoke to each other in a low voice, sharing how, when Kaku was not present, Ars would cry non-stop, especially when he got a fever. But when Kaku was around, Ars calmed down and honestly, she felt the same way. That night, they opened up to each other about their insecurities and flaws. Kaku realized that Ars's occasional magical explosions were probably keeping his power in check. They agreed to use the devil's staff regularly to prevent future outbreaks. The next morning, he made himself breakfast, but what Kaku heard on the plate was the stuff of nightmares. Stewed liver and bear paw with a suspiciously undercooked mushroom sauce. He put the horror out of his mind and forced himself to eat. Moments later, he collapsed, unable to take it anymore. From that moment, it was decided that Kaku would take over the kitchen from now on. A little later, Kaku dreamed of meeting Arno and Joy in a bar. They talked about children. Arno said he felt responsible, knowing that he had to protect them or they might die, and that helped him grow as a father. Kaku began to understand that living for Ars gave him a purpose. Arno could see that Kaku was gradually becoming a real father. Then he intervened and saying that Kaku just needed to become a good husband, although he was already doing his best. Arno joked, asking her if he had kissed her already. Embarrassed, Kaku quickly pointed out that their relationship was just a contract. Gia interjected, saying that Elma would be disappointed if she heard that. It's not that Kaku didn't like Asa. He just knew that he was a demon, not a human or an elf. Arno pushed harder, joking with Kaku for never having kissed a woman, despite his age. And he even demonstrated how it's done. To Kaku's dismay, Kaku woke up in a panic and hit his head on Asa. When he asked what he was doing, Asa, with red cheeks and ears, said it was morning, and she was just trying to wake him up. Now he has spent a year in the great Fee forest of the Federal Kingdom of Elan. It was the 10th of July, 10 past 14, according to the sacred calendar. Their days were filled with memories, and they even decorated a wall with countless photographs of Ez. Capturing every moment with his makeshift camera, Ars was now able to spy on his father tending the goats. Despite his clumsy speech, his curiosity was obvious. Kaku lifted him up, giving him a better view of the kid that was born that morning. You're the big brother now, so you must be nice. Ars lit up with a new title, brimming with pride. And of course, that day was special. It was Ars's birthday. It had been a year since Kaku started taking care of Ars, without knowing what his real birthday was. Kaku decided that the day he found him would be the day they would celebrate. Kaku gave Lars an encyclopedia of magical creatures, while Asa gave him guides into main languages and a historical compendium. The two immediately started arguing over which gift was better, each defending their choice. Ars, watching his parents fight, started shaking, with tearful voice, said that fighting was bad. They both melted at the sight of this, and the little dispute quickly ended in laughter. They spent the day teaching Ars, with Kachio reading the encyclopedia, and delving deeper into languages and history. His days were filled with joy, and the growing energy of Ars. One morning, dressed in a full suit and an insect net, Ars announced his plan. I wanted to capture the creatures I had seen in the encyclopedia. Kaku and Asa couldn't help but smile as they made their way through the forest. Watching your little adventurer chase insects. Ars was excited, and soon caught a grasshopper, proudly showing it. Kaku smiled as he remembered how he used to catch insects as a child. Hearing this, he smiled at himself, imagining Kaku as a small child, and wishing he could have seen that. His taunts only made Kaku blush, especially when remembering Arna's words in her dream. I hadn't kissed Asa yet. Suddenly, something flew by, causing Asa to cling to Kaku in fear. It was just a bat, but the proximity made them both uncomfortable. An awkward moment was interrupted by Ars, who excitedly pointed to the forest. Confused, they followed his gaze, and only saw a baby fire dragon lying in the forest. Ars, in his innocence, declared that the dragon was his little brother, recalling Kaku's earlier comment about him being the kid's older brother. Asa, alarmed, tried to push Ars away, but he was determined to protect the dragon, ignoring his protests. His sharp gaze sent the baby dragon flying towards the deepest part of the forest, leaving Ars crying over the loss of his brother. That day, Ars cried himself to sleep, and, the next morning, he was still looking at the forest, with a sad and worried expression. Meanwhile, Kyo was arriving late, had an important auction in Pummel, and needed to leave early. In her haste, she ended up breaking her precious gloves, a gift from the soul. Panic began to take hold of him, but without time to fix it, he threw the gloves on the living room table, promising to solve it later. The Asa, of course, couldn't leave things to chance, especially with the curious are on the loose. When he saw the torn gloves, a naughty idea occurred to him. The scene shifts to Port Town, Pall Mall, in the busy auction room, where offers were eagerly made for a slave for sale. In the middle of the crowd, Kaku watched in silence until he was called. Since life took over, people's attitudes have become more aggressive. As the auction unfolded, rumors spread about Kaku, the guy with a powerful team of mercenaries under his command. His made-up story became the talk of the town. Next, the auctioneer presented a new piece, a 20-something wine from the Church of Calimera. Starting at 20,000, the bidding war began and, after a fierce exchange, Kaku got the wine, for a whopping 200,000. I really needed that wine. It was almost a year ago that he met his wife, a devout woman who always dreamed of visiting the Holy Church. He thought the least he could do was let him taste the wine there. Later, Silga took something out of her coat and handed Kaku a small token of appreciation, saying it was nothing special. When Kaku opened the gift at the port, he was amazed. It was a really stunning couple's ring. At that moment, his mind returned to the dream he had with Arno and Hai. Over the past year, Kyo realized that he had fallen in love with Lala, but there was a problem. He was a demon. Fundamentally different from other creatures. His existence was linked to his soul, and his body acted simply as a container of magical energy. Demons cannot reproduce as normal beings, they increase their number by forming contracts with the souls of the dead, transforming them into demons, just as Satan did with him. Therefore, Kaku had neither natural instincts nor reproductive abilities. He could feel the feelings of the wing without even entering his soul. But he wondered if his own feelings were real or just remnants of the time when he was human. Wondering if he really had the qualifications to give her that ring. Lost in the memories of Elma, something that still touched his heart, Kaku remained at the port, immersed in his thoughts. But things were different now, he reminded himself. Meanwhile, Elas was anxiously looking out of the window and calling Lala. She reassured him by telling him that Kaku had teleportation magic, so the rain wouldn't be a big problem. When Kaku finally got home, he noticed that some of his things were missing. He joked that he didn't need them, so he got rid of them. But, in fact, he kept everything safe. He even fixed his glove. She thought he would notice right away, since he was usually that fast, but not this time. Instead, Kaku exploded in anger, yelling at him to leave things as they were. The wing, stunned by his reaction, watched as Kaku struggled with his frustration. He was clearly upset by how much that glove meant to him, but he couldn't believe that he couldn't see that she would never throw things away. He tried to explain, but Kaku's emotions got the better of him. He broke off by mentioning an ancient custom of his city, about the dark elves offering damaged items to the goddess. The comment struck a chord, and, in an instant, she slapped him, completely reflexively, provoked by the offense to his legacy. Shocked by her own actions, she left without saying anything else. The Rs, seeing all this, ran to Kaku, full of worry, but he was still too shocked to process everything. In the silence of the room, Cockle tried to calm down with the wine he bought earlier. He spent the whole day looking for the gloves but couldn't find them. Did he really throw it away? The thought consumed him, overwhelmed with guilt. The tears started to fall. Those articles were the last connection he had with his beloved family. Then someone knocked on the door. In a low voice, he asked if he had seen the ace. A wave of fear came over him, and his heart stopped beating for a moment. It turns out that Ars had gone to the forest alone in the rain. They searched for her deep in the forest, struggling to see through the rain. But Kaku could still feel the trace of his soul. In the middle of the search, Urs apologized to Kaku for slapping him earlier. Kaku admitted that it was his fault for making fun of the customs of his people. While they were apologizing to each other, they finally found Ars. The little one was sleeping soundly in the nest of a baby dragon they found earlier. It seemed that the Ars had come here to protect him. Seeing him sleeping peacefully with the baby dragon, they did not dare to reproach themselves. Then, Asa handed the glove to Kaku, and explained that he had not thrown it away and had, in fact, repaired it. He had lied before because he thought it would be funny to make fun of him. Since she started living with Kakyo, she had seen his messy and sometimes clumsy side. But she never imagined that he would really get angry. Sometimes Kaku could directly see his thoughts, and, over time, he began to depend on him more than he thought. Kaku thought that this was probably because he used his demon eye too often. Ise even got down on one knee to apologize for the previous incident, leaving Kaki confused. But they soon found themselves laughing and joking again, going back to being as before. With a deep sigh, he said, relieved that he too was a human being. Those words felt like a long-awaited response to the anguish Kakyo was carrying. In the past, there were people who treated him like a human being, but he always refused to recognize it and ran away. Until the opportunity was lost forever. But things were different now. Even if his feelings were just an illusion, he didn't want to run away anymore. Kaku knelt down in front of A, revealing a pair of beautiful rings that he was holding. He took her hand, saying that this was not a contract in the true sense. Cockle was proposing marriage. Or's heart skipped a beat when she finally realized her feelings and, with a heart full of joy, she accepted. At that moment, what started as an impromptu wedding became a reality. A while later, Ars and Baby Dragon were sleeping soundly by the fireplace. Kaku, sitting next to Urs, explained that Ars was the son of his late friend. He also mentioned that they had rushed to that remote place after dealing with bandits. But that didn't completely satisfy Urs's curiosity as to why Kaku was so good with magic. Kaku stood by his story, claiming that he had lost his memory. After proposing to Urs, Kaku finally opened up. Well, he almost left out the part about him being an otherworldly demon. And that those bandits were actually holy knights. I didn't want to upset her, but Urs revealed his own secret. She had been involved in an assassination attempt on the King of Lawrence. Kaku was a little surprised. That was your fault. Asa shared more about her past as an intelligence agent, her hometown, and how she was betrayed by the first prince. After finishing, she nervously asked if Kaku was disappointed with her. It wasn't. He reminded her that he believed in the he knew. She got angry, they both felt the same. And that night was especially hot. Time passed. In March of the year, 10¼ hours of the sacred calendar. It's been about a year and 8 months since they started taking care of Az. The child grew up a lot, and now he could speak fluently. He loved to play with the baby dragon, which they named Boris. Since that fateful rainy night, there have been important changes. First, Ars made his first friend, Bor, the baby dragon. Kako named Mixing Bobo with Ars. Bor was now officially part of the family. Second, the Ars, he could use healing magic. If his magical powers came from dragon flesh, his healing ability must be a natural talent, a rare ability that, according to Urs, was considered a divine blessing. She called him a prodigy. Thirdly, Kaku started thinking about becoming a noble. Asa knew it wouldn't be easy, so he asked her why she wanted to take this path. Kaku explained that for now they were just small merchants with a dark past. In order to create the Rs safely they needed status. That was the #1 reason. But when Asa said that being a trader was enough, Kakio pointed out reason number 2. She wanted enough power to crush the person who framed her. Urs stood still, trying to process what Kaku had just said. Are you serious? Face Lawrence. This is reckless. Kaku then asked her if she really believed that the first prince was behind his betrayal. As an intelligence operative, he could always detect real orders through contract magic, even if someone used transformation spells. You can't fake real blood. Kaku figured it must be another member of the royal family, posing as the prince. After all, why would the heir kill the king? It made more sense that the second prince, or someone more distant, was behind this. Ursel already knew what was coming next. Casil planned to become a noble to find out the truth. But why? He always said that his promise was to help her redeem herself. If that meant following the king's will, she couldn't turn a blind eye to the danger the king was in. This was all part of Kaku's promise. Casil knelt down in front of the wing. He took her hand and reassured her that he would always keep his promises. Meanwhile, Ars was there playing, wielding a bat like a sword, pretending to be the strongest hero who defeated the evil demons. Boris was right next to him. Wow, that's the way it is, isn't it? Ars was having a great time jumping and rolling on the floor. Boris played the role of a villain, but Ars exaggerated. Using lightning magic to cause a small explosion, Urs gave her an angry look, warning her not to kick up dust while she digs her clothes. Taku looked at Ars, completely immersed in his hero game, and then told Asa that he would be busy getting things ready. She teleported, just as Ars and Boris were running towards her, excited, and watching him read the book that Al was holding. As he read, Maple's eyes lit up with excitement. The hero of the story was called Ars. The hero who saved the world, returned to his village, and married his girlfriend. Hearing this, Ars's mind sped up. Curious, he asked his mother if she had already married. The Sa woke up and admitted that only nobles did this kind of thing. Realizing that his mother had never married, Ars exchanged a glance with Boris and suddenly ran away, leaving him sitting on the fence. Looking at the sky, his thoughts turned to Kaku's plan to become a noble. She remembered his words. It may work, but it will take at least 5 years. The idea made his heart race, but he dismissed it because he didn't want to get too excited. Time flew by, and Orsay continued with her daily routine, sweeping the garden and taking care of the Ars. Meanwhile, Ars was doing what he always did, playing with Boris, lifting big sticks, tearing wool from sheep, picking flowers in the garden, and throwing stones back and forth. One afternoon, I told Lars that it was time to go home. But something was strange. The Lars was shaking. When she got closer, she saw that he was crying, and his nose was running. When asked why he was crying, Ilar just pointed at Ursel, gave Boris a piercing look, wondering if he had done something, but Boris shook his head, saying it wasn't him. At that moment, Kaku came home, surprised to see the three of them crying together. What's going on here? It turns out that the Shra had secretly tried to arrange a wedding ceremony for her mother. But things did not turn out as he expected. Else was touched by her son's effort, hugging him proudly, but then panicked as she didn't know how to explain this to Kaku. Much to his surprise, Kakel smiled sheepishly, and said that he had never said that they were not going to get married. So, the stones that Ars had lined up were supposed to be the seats for the guests, and the wooden arch decorated with flowers was his attempt to create a wedding scene. Kaki ruffled Ars' hair, proud of his son's hard work, and decided to help as a father. He couldn't help but go further, using his magic to rearrange the stones, make the plants grow, and create an impressive scene. And Ars watched in amazement as Kaku's magic transformed the venue into a beautiful setting for weddings, combining Ars' hard work with his magic. The Ars was beaming, and was calling his mother. Look, isn't it amazing? But the Asa was a little worried that Kaku would use so much magic, knowing that flashy spells weren't always a good idea. But it was only for that night. Very well. Kaku took her hand, and then snapped his fingers. Suddenly, magic enveloped the wing, transforming her clothes into a dazzling white dress. Kaku smiled and admitted that although ours had arrived first, he had been secretly preparing for that wedding. Since the day he proposed to her, ours delivered a bouquet of flowers to the mother, making the wing filled with happiness. The wedding ceremony began, with them walking down the aisle and are sitting proudly in the guest seats with Boris. They arrived on stage, decorated with the heart-shaped floral arrangement that Ace had made, and Kaku gave the finishing touch, an explosion of blue fireworks lighting up the night of blessings. The soft glow made the wedding look festive and intimate. Kaku looked ahead, waiting for the future together. And for the first time, Herzl timidly pronounced his name. Their long journey finally paid off and marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. Although only RC Boris were there, that didn't take away the joy of their special night. But from a distance, a mysterious man was watching the celebration. Who will it be?